Adobe?
Hell yes. I don't want to see Zach Wilson again this year. I thought it was very, very appropriate that he sat on the sideline with that hood, with the hoodie on, looking the way that he looked. He should have looked that way. He brought it on himself. The fact of the matter is that you can be young. Hell, you could be immature. You can be undisciplined. You can be a lot of these different things. But what you can't do is give the impression to your teammates that you ain't willing to accept accountability. Can't do that. And at the end of
Yo, what's up, guys? Trying something new, doing some face cam work. Place is a little messy, but you know it is. It'll be alright. So today we had to talk about Zach Wilson. You know, bruh's been doing a little bit too much. And I think it's just time we have a dialogue on it. We have a conversation about it. Especially, I just watched Mike White play, and he was fantastic. It's not out of the question that Zach Wilson loses his starting spot. In general, with the Jets, got to find a new job somewhere else. So today I wanted to kind of go into Zach Wilson's career, even dating back to his days at BYU, and kind of analyze, see where it went wrong. Was it always wrong? You know, just try to get to the root of this situation. So without further ado, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So watching the games this last weekend, the weekend before last, it was pretty dull, but there was a good bit of dialogue to be had. I thought talking about Mahomes' sustained greatness, the Cowboys statement game, maybe even a piece questioning the trajectory of Justin Herbert's, Hall of Fame trajectory, people calling him a social media quarterback, all of that. All these topics are still in play. However, the one thing I could not get off my mind was the fraudulent nature of Zach Wilson's status as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Or simply put, he's not him. Since I began writing for this video, Wilson has since been benched and made inactive for the Jets. Next game versus the Bears, I just watched that game, and it went well for everyone not named Zach Wilson if you're a part of the Jets. But like I was saying, the coaching staff kind of already beat me to the punch with this topic, but we're going to go ahead with the video anyways because I already wrote it all out, so it's all good. The large upside prospect out of BYU, who was selected second overall in the 2021 NFL draft to the New York Jets, had a tumultuous time in the league thus far. His rookie showcase called for a 9-11 touchdown to interception ratio, but Wilson was always known as a prospect that required extensive development, so that season alone wasn't enough to write him off. I mean, one thing is for sure, the kid's got a rocket. Once I saw his frame, I thought he would have kind of like a noodle arm, but even if his famous pro day throw, the one we all seen, the one they say that, got the Jets enamored with him and all of that, but even if his famous pro day wasn't enough to convince you, the kid can sling it. The only problem is, well, everything else. His decision making and intangibles are mountains away from where they need to be in order for the Jets to succeed with him at the helm. Having a cannon for an arm is a major plus for prospects, but when nothing else you can do adds up to winning, the arm seems to matter less and less. Coming into this year, expectations for the Jets were all over the place. There was no consensus on the coach's ability or Wilson's QB play. However, the emergence of their defense has made them one of the more competitive franchises in the league. Only problem is Wilson hasn't taken that next step that the rest of his team has. So far this year, Wilson ranks as the NFL's second worst quarterback in passer rating on top of a 4-5 touchdown to interception ratio. It'd be fair to say that the Jets are winning in spite of Wilson, and certainly not because of him. The issue reached a climax after their matchup and eventual defeat at the hands of their sworn rival Patriots, marking 14 wins in a row for the Pats in this divisional rivalry, as Wilson threw for an abysmal 77 yards, only 2 in the second half if I'm not mistaken, for a final score of 10-3. After the game, Wilson was questioned by a reporter saying, Do you think the defense let you down tonight? Normal response you would expect of this if the quarterback did play bad would just probably simply be like, yeah, it's on me. I got to play better, this, that, and the other. But what did Wilson say? He just said a flat, utter no. And that's exactly what led to the coaching staff's decision to mark Wilson as an active and start backup quarterback Mike White. Now let's get into everything that points to Wilson being far out of his league as a starting QB, let alone a number 2 overall draft selection. Wilson was just the latest addition of quarterback prospects to receive the moniker of a boom or bust draft prospect. He was a 3-year starter from BYU, where he only played 30 games, throwing 68% for 7,652 yards and a 56-15 touchdown to interception ratio. His best year was his junior year in 2020, where he threw for 3,692 yards on a 74% completion percentage with 33 TDs and 3 interceptions. Obviously, Wilson's numbers were great, so it's no surprise that he ranked high on the big boards heading into the draft. Although maybe revisionist history or not, the flaws in Wilson's game were as glaring then as they are now. This was made apparent to me by Theo Ash NFL, who I'm not gonna lie, his and Brett Coleman's videos have been helping me get up to speed on many of my NFL takes and analysis when I need to do research, so shout out to them. But I'm gonna plug the clip in here, but the point is, although Wilson is a flashy player with seemingly A-tier improbability, much of his impromptu plays come in the form of him not being able to make the simple, easy play. So while his scramble ability and arm can make for a beautiful highlight reel, he's frustrating to watch in NFL games due to his inability to make the right plays, overall ending in some performances like a 77-yard, 0 touchdown performance like last week. Daniel Kelly, a former Jets scout, even said Wilson was undraftable prior to the team selection of the prospect. He noted his propensity to throw 50-50 balls and necessity of trick plays in the playbook to thrive as a major deterrent. Sometimes having the tools isn't enough. And with his glaring flaws in intangibles and game management coming to surface, this is all the more evident. Let's go ahead and look at the 10 picks taken after Wilson. Picks 4, 5, and 6 belong to the trio of Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle. I know the Jets needed a quarterback, but at what point does a quarterback become more valuable than a generational prospect simply based on the position needed? The next 5 picks belong to players like Penei Sewell, J.C. Horn, Pat Surtain, Devonta Smith, Justin Fields, and Micah Parsons. In retrospect, I think the Jets would have taken any of these picks if given the chance to redraft, and that is precisely the issue with boomer bust prospects. Sure, the off chance that they end up on the booming side, then it's a win, but you stand to lose much more if they don't pan out as envisioned. Take, for example, Trey Lance, selected with the pick directly after Wilson's selection. The tools and frames seem to be there, but keep in mind Lance only played 19 games throughout his entire college career. His 28-0 touchdown to interception ratio in 2019 was impressive, sure, but Lance was the epitome of a boom or bust prospect, and look how that's turned out for San Francisco. The same goes for them in the sense that they would have preferred any other pick taken within the top 12 in hindsight. Or, just not making that egregious trade to get the pick in the first place. Unfortunately for scouts, analyzing prospects isn't a science. But in my opinion, I'd rather go with the sure thing than taking a chance at landing the next Aaron Rodgers. Because more often than not, those decisions will not only not come to fruition, but have the ability to weigh down a franchise for years to come. Regardless, the Jets don't deserve to be ridiculed for taking a chance, because like I said, it isn't a science. But even so, Wilson has shown many more flaws in his game since his arrival to New York. Is there a chance he pans out? Absolutely. Will he ever be the player the Jets hoped he'd be? In my personal opinion, no. I'll tell you why. Expectations were sky high for the BYU alum heading into the 2021 NFL season, and it would result in an absolutely brutal start to an NFL career. Whether you want to attribute it to the bright lights of New York, his poor play, the speed of the NFL, or even coaching, this was an inescapable fact. Through his first 6 outings, the Jets went 1-5 as Wilson threw for 4 touchdowns and 9 interceptions with a disappointing 63.5 passer rating. For reference, the league average for passer rating in 2021 was 90.8. Over the weeks of 2 and 3, the Jets offense were only responsible for 6 points scored as Wilson threw for 6 interceptions over those 2 games. In the Jets' Week 7 matchup versus the Pats, Wilson got clobbered by Matthew Judon, resulting in a PCL injury and a 4-game absence. When he returned in the Week 12 matchup versus the Texans, he showed some signs of improvement, albeit not much. The most important thing was he only threw 2 more interceptions in the final 7 games with 9 touchdowns. Wilson focused on his scrambling ability more in the latter half of the season, and while he's not a runner on par with Fields or Lamar, his 5 rushing touchdowns was a good sign, seemingly. The Jets ended up winning 2 more games than their previous season, and 3 of their 4 total wins came with Wilson starting. There were some flashes in Wilson's game, most notably his showcase in Week 17 versus the Bucks, where he threw for 234 yards and an 89.7 passer rating, although in a loss. The biggest flaws I noticed in Wilson's game after the first year was holding the ball too long, erratic accuracy, and boneheaded throws. Much of the NFL media attributed Wilson's shortcomings throwing the ball to a lack of a sufficient receiver core, although I never thought that to be the case. The biggest signifier of this was, to me, even on Wilson's completions, it seemed like the Jets wide receivers had to make acrobatic catch after acrobatic catch in order to just make routine plays. And to me, that's an error in Wilson's accuracy, if anything. With a completion percentage of 68%, he ranked 27th in the league. The young quarterback struggled against both types of defenses, man and zone, ranking 28th and 29th in both respectively. The guide to defeating Wilson was simple: send heavy pressure and play man. This is due to Wilson not knowing when to give up on a play, resulting in many errant throws and rollouts, also culminating in him being one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league. The consensus for Wilson exiting his rookie campaign was that, yes, while he does have the tools, he lacks good enough instincts to play the quarterback position effectively. Too many times, Wilson would throw the ball haphazardly into double or triple coverage, or would scramble backwards to extend plays, only resulting in a sack. Wilson looks fantastic in positions that call for combine-like throws, but when it comes to live game action, he suffers mightily. The most telling stat was with a clean pocket, Wilson still only completed 62% of his passes, which ranked him 33rd in the league. Now, am I being overcritical? Possibly. But this is truly how I feel about Wilson as a starting quarterback in the league. Will he develop and become serviceable? Also, possibly. But as of now, and especially during his rookie year, that's my outlook on the guy. But what about this year? Has he shown signs of promising improvement with a year of experience under his belt? Well, you could probably guess, but regardless, let's dive into it. Looking at the season thus far, you'd probably think the Jets would be fairly satisfied with their team's performance, and for the most part, they are. But the gratitude doesn't extend to Wilson, unfortunately for him. This is much due to Zach Wilson having trouble even being on the field, be it due to injury or being made inactive for poor play. And when he is on the field, he has been largely underwhelming. The Jets find themselves in a weird spot now. They're in a position of much grander success when compared to their win-loss record of just 1 year ago, although Saleh and the team seem despondent in relation to Wilson's future with the franchise. I'd say there's reasoning behind it. I only say that because I know there's a large side of people who believe young quarterbacks are given up on way too early, and for the most part, I do agree with you. Geno Smith, great example of a guy who probably should have been given more of a fair shake during his tenure for the Jets. But for Wilson, I just don't think time is going to be enough for him. I don't think it's he just needs some time to mature situation. From my point of view, Wilson hasn't transitioned much, if at all, from his days at BYU. He's still the big play slugger who only seems to specialize in out-of-this-world throws until you realize he, too often, will create his own pressure, choose the hard throw over the simple one, and even then, struggle with making the artificially harder play that he created for himself. The stats back me up on this too. 31st in attempts, so his team doesn't believe in him. 32nd in passing yards, tied for 35th in pass touchdowns, and his highest ranking, 22nd for interceptions. His overall grade from PFF was a crushing 48.8. You could point to injuries for the reasoning behind those rankings, but if you were watching those games, you'd know it's actually a blessing for the Jets when he's not on the field. Not that I'm advocating for anyone's injury, but still, it's facts. Matt Ryan's missed a few games this season, and he's still 10th in attempts and passing yards. So, like I said, games missed shouldn't mean you're falling out of the top 32 quarterbacks in their most important stats. His best games, he looks serviceable at best, and at worst, you're practically begging him through the TV to not make a critical mistake. It's honestly a travesty to see such a fun and deep team struggle at their most important position, because by nearly every indication, the Jets should be a playoff team, except the quarterback, which division rivals Dolphins and Bills don't suffer with in that capacity, at least not right now. His best games on the season, stat-wise, each have more interceptions thrown than touchdowns, with his Week 8 performance versus the Pats where he threw for 355 yards and a 2-to-3 touchdown interception ratio, and Week 4 versus Pittsburgh where he threw for 252 yards and a 1-to-2 touchdown to interception split. I personally think his best game this season was versus the Bills. It's a big deal to lead your team to a victory over a division rival, especially one that's favored to win the Super Bowl. But more often than not, that game I was wanting the ball out of his hands by any means possible. Thankfully, the Jets' O-line has developed into one of the more dominant ones in the league, and their run game can thrive against most defenses. Although the Breece Hall loss has been more and more evident as the season goes on. Another major reason why Wilson's deficiencies were becoming more and more apparent. But the game that's been talked about to no end has been their most recent matchup versus the Patriots. I'm sure by the time this video comes out, their matchup versus the Bears will have already happened, and it has. I'm recording it right now. I just watched the game. It was a really good game. Mike White played really good. But my point is, we're talking about the Patriots game. Alright, so in their second matchup versus the Pats this season, Wilson and the Jets geared up to finally end the curse, which is losing to Bill Belichick. In likely Wilson's most important game of his young career, he threw for 77 yards on 9 of 22 passing, as the Jets' lackluster offense only managed to put up 3 measly points. With that O-line, throwing to Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims, Corey Davis, and more, James Robinson and Michael Carter in the backfield, 3 points is just flatly unacceptable. Call it coaching, call it Belichick, I don't care. You just can't perform like that as a second overall pick with that much talent surrounding you. I enjoyed this breakdown by Michael Nania, where he graded every one of Wilson's throw versus the Pats using his own system, no less, and it tells a good bit of the big picture takeaway of this game. On a 0 to 100 scale, with average play being 50 plus and great play being 60 plus points and so forth and so on, Wilson scored a 1.4. 1.4. Where 50 plus is average, Wilson scored a 1.4. There's a bunch more notable takeaways, but I think it'll do better just to show you the list and let you sit with it for a second rather than just give you a long-winded and probably misguided explanation, if I'm being honest. Once the Pats returned that punt for the TD, you may have thought Wilson's fate to be made inactive for the next matchup was set in stone there, and I wouldn't blame you. However, it wasn't until the post-game press conference where it was a common consensus that a change was needed to be made in the Jets quarterback room. I'll let the clip run now.
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No. Thank you. Room's open. My personal take on the video and why I disliked the response so much wasn't even so much the fact that he said no. It was that he had already decided what his answer was going to be before he even heard the question. Hell, before he even walked in the room. At each level, Wilson's callousness has been lauded instead of reprimanded, and you may be able to get by on flawed intangibles and impromptu play in the Big 12 at BYU, but not in the NFL, and for damn sure not in the AFC East. Honestly, now that I've reached the end, I feel like I've been too hard on the guy. Admittedly, I usually try and stay away from being too critical of players because I want my channel to be about positivity and uplifting people and stuff. You know, all the good stuff. That being said, I just haven't been able to shake this idea of Zach Wilson being a fraud since I watched that game. I just keep on thinking about it, keep on seeing stuff about it. So when I sat down to think about what my next video was going to be, I just couldn't stop thinking about analyzing Wilson's career this far and making a take off that. And I did it, and you know, the take speaks for itself. But this is the part where I turn the video over to you guys. Maybe you think Wilson needs more time, and the worst decision the Jets could have made was to bench him. But by looking at you know, their game versus the Bears, I probably wouldn't say so. I don't know. What do I know? Or you could belong to the collective that campaigns for Wilson to be moved off the team, not even just the bench. No matter what you think, let me know down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more. If you're new, really helps out the channel, so I really appreciate it when you guys do that. This video is made by Underdog. Peace.